paying the bill.
Okay, I'll send it.
Okay. Something that everybody is aware of. Since 2021, property taxes have increased upwards of 53% in some counties. That's taxes, not the property valuation, okay? It's how much the counties are charging. And back in 2021, 22, the state, I think it was 21 actually, the state said, look, the counties are getting a little bit greedy, so there were some guidelines that they started putting in place, which went into effect, I believe, September of last year. And so the counties were going crazy, and they were trying to change their rates and find all these new reasons to increase taxes to property owners. So, and I guess it is, needless to say, this is driven by the people that you put into office on the local, county, and state levels, okay, when it comes to property taxes. The state of Texas has done wonderful things trying to hold that down and pass laws, but the county, the city and counties are the ones that get really crazy, because this is how they get revenue so that they can pay for whatever they want to spend the money on, whether it's to our benefit or not. So, okay, this is the part for residential. Most people don't realize that you have all of these exemptions that are actually available on residential property, okay? And this whole presentation, the blue obviously is hyperlinks to these documents. This presentation will be available on the Google Drive, okay? And if you are not currently a member of commercial and on our boards, email me, claramaddox@kwcec.com. Email me and I will send you the presentation so that you'll have the hyperlinks and you'll be able to go and pull stuff, all right? So, residential exemptions, you have residential homestead, inherited residence homestead, 65 and older, disabled veterans and surviving spouses of disabled veterans, surviving spouses of first responders killed in the line of duty. How many of y'all knew that these were available, these extras? Solar and wind-powered energy device, and charitable organizations and businesses.
Yeah, we just put solar last year, so that's good to know.
Yeah. So then you have your resources, you've got the forms, you've got the descriptions of the various exemptions down here that, like I said, you'll have access to when you get this presentation. All the links will be working. Now, something that I think every agent should avail themselves of, training is a wonderful thing, okay? If you happen to also have, your CPA or something like that, you can take, the state offers these courses you can get CE for if you're a financial advisor, okay, a tax person. But these courses, these are full-blown courses that are free, okay? It behooves you as an agent, especially if you're going to be selling land of any kind, to understand the tax exemptions, okay? And there are 2 or 3 of these classes that are well worth the time. They take about an hour and a half to go through. And when you get this presentation, okay, you see where the mouse is down here? The photo is hyperlinked. It'll take you straight to the course, okay? Straight to it. And you can see this one is for all of them. Let me see if I can get this to advance. I don't want to go to the class. Don't want to go to the class. Hold on. What is this? Okay, let's see if I can get this to advance. Where am I down here? No. Go away. Okay, there we go. Okay, state requirements for agricultural timberland and wildlife management use special appraisal. In order to get an exemption for any of these three types of things, okay, what you do is you actually get a special appraisal approved by the state or by the county. It's actually issued, and we'll get to this, it's issued by each county. The Texas Constitution and tax code provide that certain kinds of farm and ranch land can be appraised based on the land's capacity to produce agricultural products, productivity value, instead of at market value. Landowners can apply for a special appraisal based on the property's productivity value. The land's ability to produce agricultural or timber products determines the productivity value, which is usually lower than market value. Land used to manage wildlife may also qualify for special use appraisal. And what they're saying there is not an appraisal where they're going to have an appraiser come out and appraise your property. It's a review, okay? They're going to look at it, and it's like if you look at someone and you look at how they're dressed, you're appraising how they're dressed, okay? It's the same thing with your property. They're going to look at what you send them in the application, and they're going to appraise and review and issue a determination, okay? So, but it's ruled by the state of Texas. Do you want to go grab a chair? So it's controlled by the state of Texas. There are variations. It's kind of like a state's rights issue, but within the state, the counties have the right and the municipalities have a right to make changes. They can't do any less than, but they can do more than, all right? So the cities, the municipalities, and the counties can do more than state requirement, but they can't do less than, all right?
So the owner doesn't have a choice?
What do you mean?
Well, on how it's appraised, whether based on productivity or land value.
No, the whole point of getting, in the state of Texas, the whole point of getting an agricultural exemption, an appraisal exemption, is to lower the taxes that are being assessed. As long as your property meets the requirements set by each county,
I see.
you get it.
Okay.
It's not a matter of, well, we like Susie better than we like Steve here, so we're gonna give it to her and not to him. It has nothing to do with that. As long as you meet the criteria, you get it, okay? Agricultural appraisal, primarily agribusiness, and understand anytime you do anything with land, okay, and you're doing hay production or you've got cattle on it, whatever, it's all considered agribusiness, okay? But agribusiness, that's the minimum. Agribusiness is a huge bucket of things that can fall within that category, okay? Hydroponics, you can't see the picture up here because of this stupid thing. But all of this stuff is agribusiness, okay? Whether it's chickens and cattle or whether it's row crops. And when you see this type of stuff, that's what they call row crops, okay? They're planted in a row crop. Horticulture. If you're doing hydroponics, this one down here, where'd it go? This is hydroponics. That's all agribusiness, okay? Property owners may qualify for agricultural appraisal if land meets the following criteria. The land must be currently devoted principally to agricultural use. Agricultural use includes, but is not limited to, the following activities: cultivating the soil, producing crops, raising or keeping livestock, poultry, fish, or planting cover crops. It also can include leaving the land idle while participating in a government program or for normal crop or livestock rotation. Land used for raising certain exotic animals, including exotic birds, to produce human feed, food, and other items of commercial value qualifies. Cutting wood for use in fences or structures on adjacent agricultural land also qualifies. Using land for wildlife management is an agricultural use if such land was previously qualified open space land or timberland and is actively used for wildlife management. Wildlife management land must be used in at least 3 of 7 specific ways to propagate a sustaining, breeding, migrating, or wintering population of indigenous wild animals for human use. Okay? So if you've got property out there somewhere and all you can find are wild pigs, they don't qualify because they're feral. And they're an invasive species. And for anybody that is an animal lover, I hate to tell you this, but if you see them, kill them. Because and I'm very serious about that.
Which one?
Pigs, hogs. Feral hogs, because they destroy the indigenous flora and fauna. They are horrible, horrible, horrible. But they're great eating.
Yeah.
They're great eating. So there, put them in your freezer. Hey, Carl, glad you could join us. So let's look back at this. Does anybody have any questions on this part? At all? Okay. Something I wanted to bring up on where it says cutting wood for use in fences or structures on adjacent agricultural land is also qualified. That's timberland. Okay? That's what they're talking about with timberland. It's used primarily to cultivate the trees for timber use. Okay? Agricultural land must be currently devoted principally to agricultural use to the degree of intensity generally accepted in the area. Each county is different. So you must look at that county's density requirements in order to obtain the exemption. The land must have been devoted to agricultural or timber production for at least 5 of the past 7 years. However, land within an incorporated city or town must meet not only the criteria applicable to 1D1 land, but must also meet one of the following additional criteria. The city or town must not provide the land with general services comparable to those provided in other parts of the city or town having similar features and population. Houston is a really good example of that because you have areas where you don't have city services provided, such as water and sewer, things like that, okay? Down off of 288 South, you go down there, 610 Loop South, Beltway 8 South. You've got the Fuquay area down on the south side. There are huge areas that don't have city services. People think, oh, we're in Houston, we're gonna have all this. No, not necessarily. There are actually areas in Acres Homes, which while they may have trash services, they don't have, and that's near to downtown. The reason I'm using that, it's near to downtown. 5 minutes, maybe, from downtown, maybe 5 minutes. There are large areas there that you don't have water and sewer. We've sold several tracts of land in there. So that's what they're talking about. They don't have city services. Let's see. The land must have been devoted principally to agricultural use continuously for the preceding 5 years, which you do have areas in both of those locations that have been used to produce crops, okay? So they apply. The land has been devoted principally to agricultural use or to the production of timber or forest products continuously for the preceding 5 years, and the land is used for wildlife management. And so there's another picture to show you what, let me move Carl up here, to show some of the things that constitute agribusiness again. These are the forms that are required. Application for special appraisal, and you were asking, or Susie, you were asking, can they deny or whatever. As long as when you fill out the appropriate form, you meet all of the criteria, okay, you will be given the exemption.
What if you bought a piece of land that hadn't actually been fallow, right, and they hadn't used it, and you decided you wanted to use it that way, and you had that 5-year requirement?
Yeah, you make a special application. It's up to the county if they want to grant the exemption, because generally if it's been fallow, you're going to fall under the open space appraisal. If the seller, and we'll get to this also, there is a form that the seller, an affidavit that the seller needs to apply. And we'll discuss that when we get to it. Bear with me 1 second. Okay, we're good. Timberland appraisal. Productivity value for timberland is based on the land's ability to produce timber products and is usually lower than market value. The Comptroller's Manual for the Appraisal of Timberland discusses the eligibility requirements for timberland to qualify for productivity appraisal and the methodology for appraising qualified timberland, and is adopted by the Texas Comptroller of Public Accounts under Comptroller Rule blah, 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 blah. The application for special appraisal as qualified timberland is, and it gives the two forms. And then the special appraisal for restricted use, each of these also has a special use form if it applies. Like I said, when you get this presentation, all of these hyperlinks will work, okay? And they'll take you straight to what you need.
So what's the minimum amount of acreage that's necessary for timber?
Well, it depends on the county.
So, okay. And normal?
Huh? Excuse me?
Each county has a different requirement?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Generally, the minimum is going to be 10 acres. Generally, it's 10 acres. The difference is bees. But they can vary. The only one that doesn't vary is bees. That's it. Wildlife management appraisal. The Comptroller's Guides for Qualification of Agricultural Land and Wildlife Management Use discusses the requirements that land must meet to qualify for wildlife management use to permit special agricultural appraisal as provided by Tax Code Section 23.521 and are adopted by the Texas Comptroller of Public Accounts under Comptroller Rules, blah, blah, blah. Then you've got the planning guidelines and forms. They are very strict with regard to wildlife management, okay? You have to be able to show that you have enough land and the migratory patterns, okay? Or trails, or if you're breeding endangered species. We have a guy just down from where our land is in Washington County who has taken over, I think he's got about 60 or 70 acres, and he has bison on it, okay? Now, the bison are protected, and interestingly enough, of course, I'm a geek, so I love this kind of stuff, and I love bison. We have 2 indigenous herds in the state of Texas, and in order to make sure that those herds don't overpopulate, what they do is they'll find people who will take on, they can't be killed, okay? They'll take on these surplus bison and put them on land, and they give them pretty significant tax incentives. They will also allow genetic diversity, so you can bring from the 2 different herds, okay, onto your land to increase the population because they're endangered. So it's just one of the little cool things.
So all our bison come from out of the state of Texas?
It does. They're not from these indigenous herds. And Steve is so excited that the guy around the corner brought in bison because I kept telling him, I've been telling him for 20 years, I want a buffalo, I want a buffalo, I want a buffalo and a cow. And now he doesn't have to do that because they're right around the corner. I can go see them anytime I want to. And they can be very unruly, bison. So if you have areas, you see the horned toad, we used to have, how many of y'all are natives of Texas? Okay. Not many, not
I'm from
many.
Maracaibo, and we have those.
Yeah.
¿Verdad, Isa? We have those
Now,
in Maracaibo.
y'all know that I am
And
now
we
a
eat them.
certified old fart, okay?
DX.
I am 65, okay? So I'm not eating any horned toads, trust me. We used to actually have horned toads here in the Houston area. They were cool. And now you don't find them hardly anywhere but West Texas. So the prairie chicken that's over there on the side over here, how many of y'all are familiar with the Atwater prairie chicken?
Heard of it.
Okay, it's a type of quail, all right? They are protected. There's a huge area down near Matagorda where they have a protected area for the Atwater prairie chicken.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and then of course, you've got the regular wildlife here. represented. This is another course, okay? You will find hyperlinked, and it will answer, you will learn everything there is to know as far as the agricultural exemptions, okay? I would strongly recommend that you avail yourself of these courses because it is going to give you a tool in your toolbox that other realtors are not going to have, okay? Whether you're representing a seller or you're representing a buyer, it is going to cause you to, it will enable you to stand apart, okay? And have knowledge that most realtors simply are not going to take the time to get, okay?
So what is it we're supposed to study and learn? The,
When you take these courses, each of these pictures in the presentation are hyperlinked to the course.
okay, got it.
So if you click on the picture, okay, it's gonna take you directly to the course. And most of them are about an hour and a half. And they're free, okay? And they've got stuff that you can download, little booklets and things that you can download. So let's go here. Let's see if I can do this without, there we go. This is another course, Wildlife Management Use and Reporting Requirements. Here again, it's also hyperlinked to the course. Avail yourself of this. It takes a little bit of time to take these courses, but if you've got time to sit and read a book, read the newspaper, play a game on your phone, whatever, okay, you have the time to take these courses, or any other course for that matter, especially online courses, because you simply bookmark it, pause it, and come back to it. That's like the free ABR course that NARA is offering. You got till the end of the year to register. It's going to take you a while to get through the whole course, but it's online, it's free. Start it, bookmark it, come back to it. Who grants an agricultural use exemption? While the basic requirements for each exemption are governed by the state of Texas, the Texas agricultural exemption is not technically an exemption. It is a county appraisal district assessment valuation based on agricultural use. Therefore, it is actually an agricultural appraisal granted by the county appraisal districts the tract of land is located within. It is not unusual to find a tract of land, especially if you're in more rural areas, that is actually in more than one county, okay? So even some small tracts, you'll find them where they're gonna be subdivided, they'll be not subdivided, but they actually straddle two county lines. And when you do, the requirements for each county for that portion apply. And if they're different, you have to know it. The one that is the more strict is going to be the one that you want to go with. So, landowners may apply for this special appraisal status based on their land's productivity value rather than on what the land would sell for on an open market. Typically, a productivity value is quite a bit lower than the market value, which results in a lower property tax. Landowners must use their land for the stated agricultural use. Now, let me give you an example. How many of y'all are familiar with agricultural exemptions? How many of y'all have used them? Okay, a few. All right. Here's a graphic example. Our land in Washington County, we have 10.5 acres. We have an agricultural exemption on our 10.5 acres for bees, okay? And we have 8 hives of bees, very cranky bees at times. But because we have an agricultural exemption for bees, it reduces our taxes from somewhere in the neighborhood of $6,000 a year to $800 a year. So it is a very significant savings if you can get land with an exemption. What is this stuff? Go away. There you are. I don't know if that's going to go away or not. Yeah, okay. Say what? Well, it didn't, it's not hyperlinking. unfortunately. So we're gonna have to look through this. It won't, it's not, I can't, there it went. Okay, good. Oops. Let's go back one. Okay. Some county appraisal districts will require or put more emphasis on minimum acreage, while others will value the intensity of the agricultural practice involved. The following slides show the various density requirements for Harris, Fort Bend, Montgomery, and Waller. And it's interestingly enough, as big a pain in the butt as Fort Bend is on most things, they are really loosey-goosey when it comes to agricultural exemptions, and you'll see what I'm talking about. This is Harris County. You've got all these minimum requirements, okay? Minimum acreage, if you're going for an irrigated crop, 5 acres, orchard, 5 acres, must be wholesale operation. This is corporate, this is a commercial operation, okay? Then you've got pasture land, native, and this is Harris County. Harris County is different from all the other counties. You get down to timberland, and then you get down to the standard 10 acre minimum. Wildlife management, 12.6. Then you've got rotational crops, 10 acres. Beekeeping, 5 to 20. That is standard throughout the state with no exception. 5 to 20 acres. That is the only one that's going to be standardized. Look at the animal unit. This is the big deal. If you've got someone who wants to purchase land and they want to put livestock or horses are considered livestock, although some people consider them companion animals, but seriously, no, that's a serious thing. There's a big fight going on in Congress about that, whether or not they should be considered companion animals. Any domestic animal or combination of animals with a forage dry matter requirement of 27 pounds a day, okay? Animal units equaling 1 cow, 1 horse, 6 sheep, or 7 goats. So then you go back up and you will have a minimum per acre, okay? The animal unit is per acre, all right? Excuse me. Allergies, I promise, I'm not contagious. No, fortunately I tested away from that. So you see, Harris County is very detailed, and they have significantly different requirements than most of the other counties. I'm waiting.
No, you're good.
Okay. No, it's
You're
okay.
good.
Here's Fort Bend. After all that detail, okay, from Harris County, this is Fort Bend. Okay, very loosey-goosey. Then you've got Montgomery. Get ready for this one. This is Montgomery. This is Montgomery County. This is the first page. This is the second page. They are very detailed on what they have, okay? And like I said, you'll have access to this, and you'll get all this. This is Waller, almost like Harris County, okay? They vary, so you have got to have your ducks in a row with regard to your property. Here again, let's say you're in far west Harris County, and you had a piece of property that happens to straddle Harris and Waller, which there's a lot of it out there. Whichever one is more strict is the one that you're going to tell your people that it has to be governed by, okay? Because you're not going to go out there and put a fence following the county line. Just ain't going to happen. So you're safer if you default to the more strict of the two. God forbid you're around Katy, because you actually have 3 counties that come together, and I pity the person who has land that's right there when those come together, because then you're Harris, Fort Bend, and Waller. That'd be a nightmare. The only requirements set in stone statewide are for beekeeping. A minimum of 5 acres, 6 hives in the first 5 acres, 1 additional hive for each additional 2.5 acres, 12 acre minimum. 20 acre minimum, 20 acre minimum. It is a wonderful thing, okay, on 5 acres to get an agricultural exemption, especially if you're in an area where the property values are going through the roof. When we purchased our land in Washington County, it's between Chapel Hill and Navasota. When we purchased our land 7 years ago, almost 8 years ago now, it was 11.5. We got ours for 11.5 an acre and thought we were doing great because it was running about 12.5 to 13. It is now upwards of $40,000 an acre. 40,000, and that's for a small tract. $40,000 an acre. So we are very happy. But you can imagine, without the agricultural exemption of the bees, the property values are going crazy. Those people who don't have exemptions are going to get priced right out of their properties. They're going to be scrambling for exemptions. When to apply? The application period for all counties in the state of Texas is between January 1st and April 30th of the tax year after the land is purchased. Substantial penalties will apply for late applications, a minimum of 10%. That will also vary by county, but it's a minimum of 10%. The current exemption for the land will remain in place for the entire tax year during which it is purchased. So if you have somebody that closes on a tract of land on January 31st, they're going to enjoy the exemption that is already in place for that whole year, okay? But in January of the following year, they will have between January and April to file an exemption in their own name, the entity name or the person, obviously. One of the things that you're going to have to do, oops, wrong one. Thought I had this in here. One of the things that you're going to have to do is get what's called a seller's affidavit. And I thought I had one of these on here that talked about the seller's affidavit. Let me back up. I don't think I did away with it. Here it is, down here. Okay, I went past it. Counties will also vary as to the minimum acreage required for a home site, okay? This is a very important thing. If your client is looking at buying the minimum acreage to get the agricultural exemption, and there is any thought of putting something like a residence, a cabin, whatever, on that property, you've got to check the county for the minimum acreage requirement for a residence in a rural area, okay? In Harris County, it's 1 acre. So if you're going to maintain an agricultural exemption and whatever you're going to do is a 10-acre minimum, you're going to have to buy 11 acres, okay? If you're in Washington County like we are, the minimum acreage is 1.5 acres. You've got to know what your person's going to buy the property for, what their future use is going to be. If there is any suspicion, any thought in their mind that they're going to put a residence on the land or a cabin, anything that would not be strictly agribusiness, okay, then you've got to make sure they have enough or they will lose their exemption because the county will come out. The counties now use aerials to determine who's doing what on their land. And then they send out, even in Washington County, which is a pretty big county, they send out their lady with the appraisal district. Her name is Rebecca. And you'll get a phone call from Rebecca. Hi, Miss Maddox, I'd like to come out and see what the construction is on your property. Sure, Rebecca, here's the code to the front lot. And they will come out and they will walk your property. And they will also, if you've got a bee exemption, they will also walk around to see where your hives are, okay? They will not walk close enough to see if you have bees in them, but they will walk close enough to see that you have the required number of hives, okay?
They'll send you a drone.
So you need to bear that in mind. The other thing that you've got to bear in mind is that you must have Many counties will also require a seller's ag use affidavit. Waller County is one of those counties. And they have their own form on the appraisal district or the tax assessor collector's site. And you'll have to search for it. It must be filled in by the seller. It has to be notarized. And it needs to be part of the closing package when you close on the land. Just do yourself a favor and make sure it's part of the closing package. Because if you don't, and you try to go back and get the seller to do it afterwards, guess what? They don't have to do squat, okay? And if you can't get them, let's say they've moved to the Caribbean or something, you're gonna play heck getting that form, getting it filled in, and getting it notarized. So just do it ahead of time. Make it part of your closing package for your land. Even if you're buying, and don't think that this applies only to farm and ranch, because it doesn't. Anybody who's selling commercial land right now or working with a buyer, buying commercial land, if it's over that 5 acre minimum and they're not going to develop that land in the next year or so, you want to slap some beehives on there, whether they put bees in it or not. You want to file for that bee exemption, because it's going to lower their taxes until they change the use of the land. Then there's going to be a rollback, okay? We had another presentation on rollback, but this was a couple of years ago. Basically, what you're looking at one time, the rollback varied from county to county as well. And some of them would go back as far as 7 years. Well, that became onus, okay? So here again, about 2 or 3 years ago, the state decided, okay, we need to standardize this. So now the rollback period is standardized across the state of Texas, 3 years, 3 years. So you don't have to worry about, is it 5, is it 7, is it 3? It's 3 years, all across the state, every county, 3 years rollback. Most of our contracts now, if you will look at unimproved and farm and ranch contracts, you will see that it states that the buyer is responsible for rollback taxes. That was not always the case. So you had to make sure that you put it in there in special provisions. But now the contracts state that. When it comes to rollback taxes, there's a line, and it says the buyer will be responsible for any change in use once the property closes, okay? So if you lease property, or you do a lease purchase, something like that, you've got to make sure they don't change the use of the property so that the person loses that agricultural exemption, the owner. You also have, so you have the affidavit, and then we have the rollback taxes, and rollback taxes, they go back 3 years and they assess the property as far as taxes based on what it would have been on standard use without the agricultural exemption. So like I was saying, our land would be about $5,000 to $6,000 an acre. Well, not an acre. $5,000 to $6,000 for our 10.5 acres. They would go back 3 years and they would say, okay, new buyer, if you're changing the use and you're going to develop this land and not maintain the agricultural exemption, you're going to have to pay about $15,000 in back taxes. That's the rollback, okay? If you maintain the property, the agricultural use of the property for a year, once you purchase it, they will only assess 2 years because that 3-year period moves in blocks. The longer you own it, the less of that rollback you pay. You own it a year, that 3-year block comes forward, you only have 2 years. You don't do anything with it for 2 years, you owe 1. If you go ahead, if your client holds that property for a 3-year period, they owe no rollback taxes, okay? Based on the previous. It sounds a little wonky, but that's
But they have to have.
That's how it-
They have to pay.
That's right, they have to pay it. But that's what they're looking at as far as rollback, okay? Yes, ma'am.
That's a question. So say someone owes a massive amounts of back taxes.
Uh-huh.
They could sell it and you buy it and just don't do anything with it for 3 years and it's.
The taxes are gonna have to be cleared at closing. If they owe any debts like that,
Mhm.
the title company is gonna assess all of that. They'll get the certificates from the county in question. And all of those taxes will be paid out of the seller's proceeds at closing. So the person who purchases the land starts from zero, starts fresh.
Understood.
Yeah, that's with anything. That's with any property. Even if it's a residence that somebody is, a couple of years and the county hasn't, or the municipality hasn't assessed and seized the property. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's a whole nother bucket of worms if they've already taken it for tax sale. How many of y'all know what the rule is on tax sale? If the county takes, or the city, if a taxing authority takes a property here in Harris County, I'll use that example, they don't necessarily have to take the property at like a 3-year mark. A lot of people think, well, if I'm in arrears 3 years, 2 or 3 years, they'll come and take it. Not necessarily. We actually had a situation where a piece of property had been in default for 25 years.
Oh, wow.
But it was a tiny little piece of land. It was tiny in an old subdivision, little tiny, what we used to call a shotgun house. Do y'all know what a shotgun house is?
No.
Okay, it's a long skinny house. You could fire a shotgun at the front door and it goes through the back door.
Oh.
So that's what that means. So it was a little tiny, I kid you not, this little bitty house was probably 850 square feet, tiny. And it had been in arrears for 25 years. When that happens, obviously, they have to find all the heirs and assigns, okay, and notify them the property is being taken. Because the original owner had been deceased for about a decade, okay? So, and heirs had been using it, and anyway, but long story. So when it comes to that, once that property is seized, okay, you have 2 years. If you're the owner of the property that it's seized from, you have 2 years to pay what's due. The person that buys the property does so with that warning. If those funds are made good, if that money that is due is made good, you lose land.
Yep.
Okay?
They have to pay your interest or something?
You can assess fees, but if they make good on those debts, because then what happens is you file a lien. Okay? So tax sales are wonderful, but just make sure you don't figure there is any way they're gonna pay those back taxes or mortgage due. So anyway, do y'all have any questions that have popped up regarding agricultural exemptions?
I have a question about, is
Hey,
there,
Carl, go ahead. Yeah.
is there someone in your fees on a property?
You're breaking up, sweetie. What did it say?
Is there someone meant to plant beehive on a property?
I can't understand you. You're breaking up, Carl. Hang on, let's see if we can do that. Oh, I see something at the chat. Let me see. Yeah, pretty important. Ask your question. Is there somebody to plant beehives on the property? They are called, beekeepers are called atheists, okay? And yes, I know that sounds weird. But yes, there are actually companies that will put you in touch for a fee. They'll put you in touch with people who will help you get your ag exemption. If you want bees, they'll do that. If you want somebody, if you're gonna have hay production, but you don't wanna mow it, they'll put you in touch with companies that will definitely come in and mow it and take your hay in order to do that. Or cattle, they'll run cattle on your property. Absolutely. You can also advertise and find them all on your own. Do I have a personal recommendation? No, but I can find one for you. They're actually, when you go into some of these rural counties, you'll see billboards up. Do you have land that needs an agricultural exemption? Call this number. And it's a company that does that. It's a clearinghouse that does that.
So the state doesn't care whether they're your animals.
They don't care. It's the use, it's the productivity of the land. That's all they care about, is the productivity of the land. Absolutely, Carl. Glad you asked the question. Good one. Any other questions? Nothing? Believe? Any questions?
Chipper question was it was like,
Ain't that nothing in it?
yeah,
It's up to the
he
county.
said
Right.
twice. So I go, like, okay, well.
He's so sensitive. He's a poor puppy.
Yeah.
He's a sensitive person.
I'm like, whatever.
What was your question, Judy?
There was a place on 290 around Hempstead that had a sign up for get your bee exemption, wasn't there something?
Yeah,
along there
yeah,
that
yeah.
promoted?
Absolutely, absolutely. Bees are the easiest, especially if you're not over 20 acres. 5 to 20 acres is the range. And the deal is, all they want to see are the beehives. They want to see those hives. I don't know anyone except one dude down in Brazoria County. And he is hard-headed. He's with Brazoria County Appraisal District. And he will actually don, because he's a beekeeper, he will put on his bee suit and he will go out and look. But the rest of the counties, it's a drive-by. Or they'll do an aerial, like Geraldine was saying. They'll do a drone, an aerial, and see if they see your hives. We keep our hives in a 35-foot wide power easement that we had put in when we had our power lines and transformers put in. And they're separated by a huge line of trees so that visitors don't see them. You know, the dogs stay away, the cattle in the adjacent property, they're separated by a fence. Nobody messes with the bees, and we put signs up. You don't want to mess with bees. They get ugly. So they get very testy, very testy. So any other questions? Wow, I must have been really clear on everything.
Well, I'm sure my questions will come once I really start looking at the course and.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Here again, I will send you the PowerPoint, okay? I'll send it to you in a PDF form, but the links will work, okay? I would strongly recommend you take the time to take the courses. They're free. It's a good tool. It adds to your abilities. I will also send out, I'll upload the folder that I have with all of the manuals and the guidelines and all of that stuff to the Google Drive, and I'll send out that Google Drive link again, okay? You will also have those links. For those of you who are not on the corporate boards, the links to the manuals are in here, okay? It's just easier for our people if they're downloaded. So we're going to come down here. And since nobody has a question, can't believe how Harris County is. And you see how detailed horses with regard to breeding and all of that on here?
But I would like
This is
that.
Montgomery.
That would be so helpful.
Yeah, it's there.
Exactly what.
Yeah,
you-
absolutely, absolutely.
Because I can see, I just took a different.
So it depends on what you're doing. Montgomery County is real picky, okay? Because they want that money. Now, when you think about it, okay, counties that don't have as much of an agricultural income, okay, a lot of Fort Bend County is in the floodplain and stuff like that. They're more interested in the residential development. But when you get into counties like Montgomery, where it is a large county, and you've got a lot of people who have moved up there for these agribusiness endeavors and retired up there, that's why they're so picky.
It's here in Texas.
You got a lot of horse facilities up there, a lot of horses.
Can you expand a little bit, you were talking about, so you have to have 5 acres for bees,
Minimum.
right? But if you're gonna put a house on it and that county requires an acre, so then I have to have 6 acres, is that additional acre also part of the exemption?
Until they build the house.
Oh.
So if they buy 6 acres,
Yes.
okay, because they think in the future they're gonna put a home, okay? If it's a county that requires an acre, all right, then they need to buy 6 acres.
Mhm.
Until they build the home, the whole thing is under ag exemption. They're gonna apply for the whole thing to be under ag exemption.
So they're gonna end up having 2 rates.
What'll happen is the county will go in and they'll section off the portion that has the house,
Okay.
and you will get a new tax ID for that 1 acre. So you'll get 2 bills, okay? One for the 5, one for the 1, with 2 different amounts on it, okay?
All right, yeah.
That's how they
So
work
you
it.
can't, whatever those exemption acres are, 25, whatever, you can't, no residential, you can do outbuildings and stuff like that on those.
If they're part of the agribusiness,
Okay.
like on our land, we've got a barn,
Yeah,
and we've got a well house, things like that,
Yeah.
our aviaries,
yeah.
all of this, it doesn't have to just be a structure, it has to be a residential type structure. So, those are covered by the exemption, those are fine.
Mhm.
It's only residences. So let's get on the way to the end. Here we are. Sure, no questions, because I'm closing it down. Okay, I think that's it. So we're gonna stop here. Carl, we're done. Do you have any questions other than what you posed?
Thank you. That's it. Appreciate you.
Okay, good deal. Your daughter has, your girl has taught you the danger of bees. Yeah, they'll get you. Okay, thanks, guys. We will conclude this